Welcome to our fifth video on our topic for ecology unit, and in this video we are going to be looking at unit 4.4, which is on climate change. Okay, so we'll start off looking at some of those required understandings. So first of all, let's have a think about when we're talking about climate change, what are we actually talking about? And you think that planet Earth has different layers. You know, it's got the core, the mantle, and the crust as spheres of the solid planet. But then we've got the atmosphere, and the atmosphere has got spheres that wrap around the Earth as well. Okay, so you'll see them there, the troposphere, the stratosphere. Now, the atmosphere is actually a collection of gases. So if you imagine in space you've got all these gases, and if you think about gravity, they're all pulled to a solid object. Okay, so anything with mass has gravity, and Earth is a large item. The bigger the item, the more gravity it has. Earth is massive, okay, so it has this massive pull of gravity, and it pulls towards it not only us as humans and the world around us, but also gas is pulled towards it. The particles of gas are pulled towards planet Earth by gravity, and that is what causes our atmosphere and causes this collection of gas to be around our Earth. But when we go out of the atmosphere, there are not those gases, there is no air. So air is that collection of gases. Okay, its role, so having these gases around the planet, what it does is it retains heat. So at night time, when the sun isn't directly on certain parts of the Earth, there is still heat moving around in that atmosphere in those convection currents, okay? And what this means is our planet Earth actually maintains a constant temperature without extreme fluctuations of hot and cold when moving from day to night. That allows life on Earth. Now, the retention of this heat inside this atmosphere is what we call the greenhouse effect. Now, this is a natural phenomena. Okay, I'm not talking about climate change here. I'm not talking about global warming. I'm just talking about the natural greenhouse effect. Those, the sun's rays that get trapped within this gaseous layer around the planet is just like a greenhouse. It is a natural phenomena. Okay, so thinking about the greenhouse, so thinking about Earth with this layer of gases. So solar radiation, this shortwave radiation, enters our atmosphere, and you can see this in the diagram here, the sun's rays coming in from the sun. Okay, now shortwave energy is absorbed by objects on Earth, okay, so grass, rocks, animals, plants. That then gets transformed into heat energy, which is long-wave radiation. Okay, now objects radiate long-wave radiation energy back out towards the atmosphere. So the shortwave comes in, long-wave radiation is then radiated back out. The problem is long-wave radiation cannot escape the atmosphere, okay? So shortwave radiation can come in and can be reflected back out, okay? That's fine. But long-wave radiation, that can't reflect back out into space. It kind of gets trapped and it bounces back in. That's great, okay? It just stays within the atmosphere, and naturally, if the balance is all right, then that long-wave radiation just keeps our planet at a constant temperature, which has allowed life to occur on Earth. Okay, so naturally in our atmosphere we have these greenhouse gases which allow this heat energy to stay in our atmosphere. Okay, and some of these greenhouse gases you can see here, we've got water vapor, nitrous oxide, we've got carbon dioxide and methane. So these are those gases that allow that long wave radiation to be absorbed and reflect back to the Earth, okay? So keep that heat within the atmosphere. Now, the effectiveness of those gases depends on their ability to absorb long wave radiation, the concentration of the gas in the atmosphere, so the more gas you've got, the more heat would be absorbed. Okay, now carbon dioxide and water, they are the most significant greenhouse gases. You probably would have, water vapor. All right, now these absorb the most energy, okay, and reflect lots of energy back to the Earth. So let's have a think about carbon dioxide, okay. This stays in the atmosphere for a very long period of time. Okay, other gases can retain more heat than carbon dioxide, but they don't stay in the atmosphere for as long, and therefore, because they're unstable, whereas our carbon dioxide is nice and stable, it will stay in the atmosphere for a long time and absorbs quite a lot of energy. Okay, we know that carbon dioxide is released by cellular respiration. It's also released by combustion reactions. So the chemists, well, all of you should know because I've just taught this to my year 10s. Any combustion reaction, one of the products is carbon dioxide. Okay, so if you're burning biomass or you're burning fossil fuels, they're combustion reactions. Therefore, carbon dioxide is released. Now, carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere by photosynthesis, okay, and also it dissolves in the Earth's oceans. Water vapor. Okay, so this is formed by the evaporation of water from oceans, or also by the transpiration from plants. So when water evaporates from the plant's leaves, that causes water vapor in the atmosphere. It's removed from the atmosphere by rainfall and snow, so precipitation. It continues to retain heat after it condenses to form droplets of water in the clouds. Okay, and it absorbs heat energy and radiates it back to the Earth's surface. Now, it also reflects heat energy back as well, so it doesn't just absorb, it also reflects heat energy. Now, this explains why the temperatures drop so much more quickly at night when there's a nice clear sky. Okay, so if you've got a clear sky and you can see stars, the temperature drops very quickly compared to if there's cloud cover. Generally, if it's cloud cover, it will be warmer. Living in England, if it's going to snow, generally it will be warmer than if it's a cold, frosty night. Okay, so we said there was other greenhouse gases. We've looked at water vapor and carbon dioxide and said that they are the most effective too, but there are other greenhouse gases. Okay, we've got methane. Okay, it's the third most significant greenhouse gas. It's emitted from marshes and other waterlogged habitats. Paddy fields are an example of this, where rice is grown. Also released from landfill sites where organic wastes have been dumped. Okay, it's emitted by bacteria that live in the gut of humans, cows, and other organisms that aid digestion. Another greenhouse gas we've got, nitrous oxides. This is released naturally by bacteria in some habitats and also by fertilizers in agriculture and vehicle exhausts. Two of the most abundant gases in the atmosphere are actually nitrogen. 80% of our atmosphere is the inert gas of nitrogen, and oxygen, about 20% of the atmosphere is oxygen. These are not greenhouse gases as they do not absorb longer wave radiation. Okay, so nitrogen alone, not a greenhouse gas. Oxygen alone, not a greenhouse gas. Combine the two, so you've got the different nitrous oxides, then you've got a greenhouse gas. All of the greenhouse gases together actually make up less than 1% of the atmosphere, naturally occurring. Okay, so in this graph, we've got the atmospheric greenhouse gas levels, okay? And we are looking back over a millennia, okay? And we can see our current level here. You can see 1950s, okay? So you can see our current level is much higher than it has been at all in the millennia. There's been peaks and troughs all the way along. However, we've had this rapid increase to the current day within the last 50, 60 years. Okay, here we're looking at all the greenhouse gases. You'll see we've got carbon dioxide, we've got nitrous oxides, we've got methane, and then you've got some gases called the CFCs, okay? Also greenhouse gases, which we don't look at in our course. Now, you will see with carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, they've all got a similar pattern. Okay, you can pick the trend lines up on carbon dioxide and methane, the pink line. Okay, nitrous oxide hasn't got a trend line because it is very consistent in its positive correlation there, its increase. Okay, you'll see both carbon dioxide and methane have got annual rhythms, so they peak and trough throughout the year. So obviously seasons do impact those gas levels. Okay, this just another graph. You've just got to get used to being able to read these different graphs however they're presented to you. Okay, so we're looking at the amount of these gases. We're looking from 1850 to the year 2000. Okay, and you can see the concentration of the different gases and how that's changed over time. Interestingly, CFCs didn't even really exist before the 1970s, and CFCs are gases that are found in refrigerators, in your spray can deodorants and things like that. So really popular through the 80s and 90s there, but now much less used. You'll see the increase in methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxides being the green. Okay, so if we think about carbon dioxide, and we think about this historically, okay, so to deduce is one of your command terms there, deduce. So to deduce carbon dioxide concentrations and past temperatures, columns of ice have been drilled in the Antarctic. So we call them ice cores. And what we do with the ice core is they look at them and they test them. Sorry, they probably look at them as well. But bubbles of air trapped in the ice can be analysed for their carbon dioxide concentration. Okay, so global temperatures can be deduced from the ratios of hydrogen isotopes in the water molecules. So you can test all different things from these ice cores. Trends in atmospheric gases are studied as indicators of potential climate change. So you can look way back through history. You can take an ice core, you can study the hydrogen isotopes to work out the age, and then you can look at the levels of the gases to work out climate change. Carbon dioxide has been monitored at Moanalua in Hawaii. Now we talked about that in our previous video, okay, and we've been monitoring atmospheric carbon dioxide at the lab there since 1958. The basic trend is an increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and you can see that on our graph here from the lab. Okay, so we've talked about the greenhouse effect, and we've said how this is actually a natural phenomenon. Okay, now what we now move on to is looking at the enhanced greenhouse effect. Okay, and this is what you hear about. So you'll hear about the greenhouse effect and how that's potentially causing global warming. Okay, but what you must remember is there is a natural greenhouse effect, and without it, there would not be life on Earth, on our planet. Okay, so let's look now at the enhanced greenhouse effect. So, as I said, the greenhouse effect, that's good. Without it, we wouldn't be here. However, the enhanced greenhouse effect, that's not good. That's bad, and that's what's causing our global warming and climate change. So human activity is causing the enhanced greenhouse effect. Okay, oxides of nitrogen through industrial processes, burning of fossil fuels and fertilizers. We've got methane from cattle waste disposal, landfill, gas leaks. More meat consumption is causing more cattle farming, which is causing more methane. But also remembering we also get methane from that rotting plant matter and marshy areas. So we also get that methane from rice paddy fields and things like that. Increase in rice production equals an increase in methane. Okay, we've got that increase in carbon dioxide from burning the fossil fuels. And then we've got this deforestation. We are removing those carbon sinks. Okay, so if you think about it, these are all our fluxes. Okay, and then we're removing our carbon sinks. And by deforestation, those trees are what remove the carbon dioxide from our atmosphere through that process of photosynthesis. And then not only that, we're removing these trees, we get dead vegetation that's rotting or gets burnt. So we're releasing that carbon dioxide. Okay, so now we're going to move on, and we've seen this whole idea of these greenhouse gases. We know that these greenhouse gases are actually really important for our planet to ensure that there's life on our planet, keeping our planet at that constant temp. However, we've also established that through human activity, we are releasing more of these gases into the atmosphere. We're enhancing that greenhouse effect. So what does that mean for our climate? Couple of important things to remember. We've got weather and we've got climate. The weather's the current condition in a small area, okay, so it can change rapidly. It's short term. Climate, these are patterns of temperature and precipitations over long periods of time, okay. Climate is long term, weather is short term. Weather is what's happening outside your window at the moment. Climate is what's happening over a long period of time in an area. All right, climate change. So you would have heard lots about climate change, okay? And so what is actually happening? We had changes in temperatures, okay? The temperatures get warmer. Sea and ice cover melts and gets smaller. The ocean waves absorb more solar radiation than highly reflected sea ice, okay? So more heat is being absorbed rather than being reflected out of the atmosphere. So because the oceans are getting warmer, the temperatures are rising even more. Now the sea ice cover melts and that starts shrinking even more. And the temperature's warm and we're getting into this. It's a cycle. It's a vicious circle of climate change and warming. It's long term. Climate is long term. Climate change is long term. Okay, we're looking over thousands of years. How do we know that climate change is occurring? Well, there's two ways. First of all, is through our fossil analysis. Okay, scientists can analyze fossils of temperature sensitive organisms. Okay, and you can look at a period of time when these organisms died out. You can predict temperature through that. Our other way is looking at the ice cores, what we already spoke about, where scientists will look at air bubbles trapped in the ice core, use radioactive dating to determine how old the ice is, and then they can analyse the ratio of oxygen isotopes in the air in the bubble. And just having a look on the diagram here, you thought that water was simple. Well, no, look at our different isotopes there. We've got H2O with oxygen 18, we've got oxygen 16 as the different isotopes. Now, just interestingly, oxygen 18 is preferentially removed relative to oxygen 16 by precipitation. So that shows you just roughly what that's talking about in terms of different oxygen isotopes in the air bubbles. Okay, so this quantity is used to estimate temperature over time. So again, thinking of isotopes, so it's the same element, okay, it's just got different electron numbers in it. So that's what an isotope is. And here we're looking at isotopes of hydrogen. So it's hydrogen 2, okay, you see the little 2 there. And we've got oxygen, we're looking at isotope 18, okay, and we're looking at 2 different locations for each. That's what the different colours are. And then we're looking at the change in those levels. So just remembering how you read these different graphs. Okay, this graph, again, we're looking now at carbon dioxide concentration and temperature and how they've tracked over the last 300,000 years. Okay, and we've got temperature on the red, carbon dioxide on the blue. And you can see that when carbon dioxide peaks, as does temperature. Okay, and then we've got this pattern that's occurring over here. Okay, we've got this massive rise in carbon dioxide emissions, and the temperature still pretty high, hasn't done a peak yet, but that is in 2007, the end of that graph. Okay, so here we've got carbon dioxide in the red and temperature in the blue. You can see those similar patterns again. Okay, and this is to the current day. Problem with this graph is we don't actually know what the current day is. Okay, this graph could be 20 years old for all we know. So just beware when you're looking at different graphs what the scale is showing you. Alrighty, so we've looked at the greenhouse effect. We've then looked at how humans enhance the greenhouse effect. We've talked about those greenhouse gases. We've talked about what climate is. We've looked at some changes in climate. What are the consequences of climate change? So we've got this higher temperature increases the evaporation of water from oceans, leading to more frequent and longer periods of rain delivered through thunderstorms and these intense storms. We've got higher ocean temperatures that cause tropical storms and hurricanes to be more frequent and powerful. So these are all things you've been hearing of. We've got rises in temperature and not likely to be evenly spread around the world. This is really quite interesting. Okay, so those temperature rises not evenly spread. Now the west coast of Ireland and Scotland may become colder if the North Atlantic current brought less warm water from the Gulf Stream to the northwest of Europe. So some areas could get colder and more snow. Rainfall distribution would be likely to change. Some areas prone to drought, whilst others would have intense rainfall and flooding. So it really is about changes in the balance as such of the weather distribution. And these are all abiotic features that we're talking about here. Okay, if we look at some consequences of climate change, we look at some of the biotic features. Well, extinction. We've got areas of ice sheets melting. They are habitats for creatures. We've got sea levels rising. Habitats are getting destroyed. We've got changes in carbon dioxide levels in seawater or in water, making water more acidic. We've got changes in water temperature. We've got storms, we've got floods, we've got drought. All of these things are damaging habitats, which will lead to extinction. Interestingly, we've got this increase in photosynthetic rates because we've got more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So remembering our graphs of the limiting factors on photosynthesis, that the more carbon dioxide, the more photosynthesis you will get until a certain point. So what does that do? Well, that with more carbon dioxide, more photosynthesis, you get more plant growth. That will cause changes to habitats. Okay, just because you've got more plants, yes, that's a good thing, but not necessarily if you're something else living in that habitat and now your environment's been taken over by plants. As I said, the CO2 dissolving in oceans, so we're getting more acidification. There's so many things that's changing habitats due to climate change. Alrighty, so I've kind of touched on this, but I'll just go into it a little bit more. Back in the early 1800s, the Industrial Revolution occurred. Machines started replacing humans. So lots of human-operated jobs then became machine-operated jobs, which were jobs by machines that use fossil fuels. So in the 1800s, we saw this peak in industrialization and the increase in the burning of our fossil fuels. From that, we have seen this massive increase in our greenhouse gases. Okay, in your applications and skills, you need to know about the threats that climate change is causing to our coral reefs. Now, coral reefs are very, very sensitive to changes in water temperature, water acidity, and even depth of water. So when you think with climate change, we've got changes to water temperature, water acidity, and the depth of water. All of these are being impacted by climate change, as I just said. Increasing global temperatures is causing a rise in water temperature, increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is absorbed by the ocean. That increases the ocean acidity. Remember from the carbon cycle, we said about the carbonic acid being formed. Okay, increase in temperature, we get that melting of ice caps, changes in the depth of water. Okay, so all of those things are impacting our coral reefs. Now, you might have heard of coral bleaching. Okay, so basically many types of coral have got this special symbiotic relationship. They've got tiny marine algae that live inside of the coral tissue. Now, these algae are very, very efficient food producers that provide energy for the corals that the corals need to grow. Now, coral bleaching occurs when the relationship breaks down. Okay, without the algae, the tissue of the coral animal appears transparent and the coral's bright white exoskeleton is revealed. Once the corals bleach, they begin to starve. If the conditions return to normal, corals can regain their algae and return to normal colour and survive. But mostly bleached corals will die if the stress does persist. So again, we just have another graph. We've already seen this one. This is over the last 300 million years, and we're just showing that carbon dioxide concentration and that temperature concentration. Showing the same thing again, thinking about the fact that we're talking about ocean temperatures rising, we're talking about carbon dioxide levels increasing and that carbon dioxide dissolving in the oceans, both of which are affecting our coral reefs. As scientists, from this day on, you need to be able to evaluate claims that human activities are not causing climate change. You will get people argue that human activities are not causing global warming. You will get people who say that climate change is not happening. And as a scientist, you need to be able to scientifically justify the fact that these things are happening. Okay? There is a way of doing that. You need to be sensitive to the way the person is talking to you. And this is a skill we are going to learn in class. You need to be able to put across your justified scientific facts. It's not your opinion, it's fact, without offending the other person if possible. Now, on a side note, we have talked about global warming. We have talked about greenhouse gases. We have not at any time mentioned ozone. And the ozone layer and the hole in the ozone is a completely different thing to global warming. Ozone is an atmospheric gas. Look, it's there. It collects between the stratosphere and the troposphere. Okay. It is an atmospheric gas. It is not a greenhouse gas. Most people have heard of the hole in the ozone layer. Now, ozone is an atmospheric gas, not a greenhouse gas. It has very little ability to absorb or reflect heat back to the Earth's surface. It's no good for that at all. However, ozone blocks UV rays from the sun. Human activities are releasing large amounts of pollutants that have depleted the ozone in the atmosphere, causing what we know as that hole in the ozone layer. Ozone is not a greenhouse gas and it does not contribute to global warming and climate change. UV rays are really bad. It increases sunburn. It has various effects like that, but it does not affect global warming. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I believe that is our last one for topic 4. So I will see you in our next unit.